Oh, for Thompson.
I don't think there's any. Fair enough. So, so just don't put it on there.
All right, it's 4:01 on November 19th. I will now open this, the Thompson Springs Special Service Fire District meeting. The first item on our agenda is citizens to be heard. If you are here to make a comment on the Thompson Springs Special Service Fire District, please raise your hand and come forward. Anyone in the chambers here to make a comment on Thompson? Anyone online here to make a comment on Thompson? All right, looks like we don't have anyone to make a comment on the TSSSFD. We'll move on to our consent agenda. The consent agenda today consists of approval of minutes, which I actually don't think we have, so we'll strike that one. And second item on our consent agenda is approval of bills. Total bills in the amount of $5,004.60. Total payroll in the amount of $1,984.48 for bills and payroll entirety of $6,989.08. So I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. All right. Motion by Mike, second by Mary. All those in favor of approving consent agenda, raise your hands, and that motion passes unanimously 5-0. Okay, we are on to general reports, of which it looks like there are none, so we'll move on to our fire chief's report. Is Mark with us today? Looks like not. Let's see, I'm trying to pull up he did attach a report, which I'm trying to pull up now.
I got it
If
here.
you have it, okay. Actually, Evan, if you would, yeah, do you mind reading it?
I am. It says the chief is working with the Moab Valley Fire Department on the transition to annexation.
Perfect. All right.
Thanks, Evan.
And I think in line with that, this will probably be our second to the last TSSSFD meeting ever.
Wow.
End of an era. All right. All right. Well, thank you, Mark, for all your hard work on this over the years, and hopefully we'll be here next meeting. All right. We have no other business regarding Thompson, so I will now adjourn this meeting at 4:03, and we will return from recess for a regular Grand County Commission meeting. All present are Commissioners Walker, Clapper, Winfield, McCurdy, McGann, Hadler, as well as County Attorney Stocks and County Administrator Hall. Please rise for Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And with that, I would thank Commissioner McCurdy for spearheading the hanging of our new Utah state flag over there. All right, we'll move forward. The next item on our agenda is citizens be heard. If you're here to make comment about anything on our agenda today, please raise your hand. I'll give you a shout and you may come forward. Cliff.
Thank you. I'm Cliff Kuntz, the chair of the Motorized Trails Committee, here to add something about the e-bike agenda item. So I saw the good letters from Trail Mix, the GCAT staff information, and stewardship committee of Sand Flats, and you know, all of them were raising important issues. And I don't want to do anything to screw up the mountain bike trails that have been developed so well over the last couple decades. But I do want to add a couple things here. Your draft letter, it points out that, you know, the class 1 e-bikes are just part of what's coming. You have the other classes all the way up to the electric motorcycle, which has its own benefits. You know, it's still relatively quiet, still gets people outside exercising and hopefully appreciating places that they might not otherwise do with hiking or whatever. So yeah, thank you for acknowledging that you know, this answer, well, the solution to managing the spectrum of electric vehicles will come from more than just the existing mountain bike trails. But there's a couple other aspects to that Motorized Trails Committee letter that I think are worth adding in there. And one is about this idea of an alternative to be analyzed in which all of the mountain bike trails listed by the BLM are open to class 1 e-bikes, because this is just scoping. You could even indicate that, you know, your preliminary preference is exactly what Trail Mix recommended. But you know, I've got an indication from the BLM rec planners that they're interested in analyzing more than one action alternative. And what we're seeing so far, although preliminary research needs to continue, the results are generally positive, and we see that on trails, not just here at Dead Horse and then over at Fruit of It. I was just on a Utah RAC meeting with the BLM Price Field office at the Goodwater Rim Trail, and they didn't even mention that the trail's open to e-bikes until I got that from them, and they said, yeah, it just has not been a problem for I think 5 years now that they've managed Goodwater Rim to class 1 e-bikes. The trouble is that this enforceability problem, the ability to identify class 1 e-bike versus any other class of bike, or versus an analog bike, a traditional mountain bike, is becoming increasingly hard. The class 1 e-bikes are looking more and more like regular mountain bikes. And so that's yet another reason to consider having a mountain bike trail open to our class 1. It might actually make enforcement easier, but I fully acknowledge that enforceability is the issue. So in addition to asking them for a spectrum of alternatives to be analyzed, I hope that you will raise that enforcement issue in this letter. Not that the county can single-handedly solve the problem with you know, the different indications on the bike and efforts to discourage tampering with the different classes, but I mean, now is the time, because of what's coming, to say, hey, we need to, as a county, work with the other counties, state, federal government to get the e-bike industry to help make sure that what they're coming out with, which is great, and I look forward to adding my, but that it's possible to identify it reliably, to enforce it, and ultimately thank you.
Thanks. Is there anyone else here who would like to make comment? Is there anyone online who is tuning in to make comment in our Citizens to be Heard segment? Okay. All right. We will move on then. Let's see. I believe we have no presentations, department reports, agency reports. So let's move on to our commission general reports. And we always start that off with commission member disclosures. Is there anyone of our commissioners here who needs to disclose anything about today's agenda?
I disclose that I have a special recreation permit with BLM that includes mountain biking, and it could potentially be affected by changes made to those plans.
Evan, anyone else? All right, we'll move on to general commission reports and future.
As well as Arches commercial use of.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Evan.
Got a lot of letters.
Do you want to start us off with reports then?
Sure. It's budget season all over town, so all the meetings that I've attended have been around approving budgets for upcoming hearings. Those included the cemetery, the health district's hearing will be coming up as well, and this morning the EMS worked through theirs as well. And with our budget meeting, I mentioned some of the ambulance things, as well as I'm forgetting the name, the tier 2 retirement or whatever it is that EMS is looking at adopting that as well. So for decisions in our public safety realms. That's just kind of seems to be the move that everyone's going towards. And I believe that's all I got.
Thank you. Let's see, Kevin.
I was just looking at my calendar. I don't think I have anything to report, other than things that are already on the agenda, like, budget items.
Bill?
Yeah, just a little update on the USU position for the small business development. We did receive an email today, but it does look like that's back on track. And I think that they're asking for some kind of confirmation in the last email regarding where we approved an additional, I think it was $19,000 or $20,000, something to round out the number for 3 years. But at any rate, they are going to relist that position.
Great.
And then it'll be open for applications again. So we've got.
No, that's great. Thanks for your work on that. And I did, Clerk Wojtek asked that I forward that letter, so I forwarded that letter to him. So,
Oh, good, thank you. And then, let's see, I was at UAC last week with the Utah State Association of County Commissions and Councils. There was a lot of public lands discussion there, was the biggest thing that was going on, and just trying to guess what the new administration would be trying to do moving forward.
So I want to point out that Bill was elected vice chair of the USAC council. So congratulations on that, Bill.
Yeah, thank you. I was, I'm not sure. I think it's just more workload, but anyway.
Not a fruit.
Let's see, we did, I think, have a budget advisory board meeting, Kevin, I feel like. And I have it in my notes anyway to report that there was a meeting. I don't have any report on it, with just that budget's been ongoing. And then I was in a meeting with the sheriff, and I don't remember if our county attorney was there. I think it was just the sheriff and UDOT regarding the speed limit changes that are gonna come about. And I know the paper's already reported on those, but a lot of those speed limit changes are being brought about by the light at Aggie Boulevard that's moving forward. So it's requiring definitely a slowing down of traffic on the south end because of the trucks coming down that hill. And so they did a study and took that speed limit all the way through. And so that's coming up. That's the last thing I got.
Thanks, Bill. Mike?
Personally, don't have anything, have meetings coming up that I'll report on our next meeting, but Bill actually left out. I don't know if any of you guys noticed that he was nominated for the CIV board also. So
That's right. I did hear that. When is that decision going to be made, Bill?
The governor's office will have to approve the appointment, and then it'll go to the Senate for confirmation, and that'll, I'm guessing, is in January.
Is there kind of a rubber stamp, or are there other applicants, or?
No, I was appointed by the Southeastern Rural Development Agency Board
Oh, yeah,
that I sit on, so there's no competition.
The CERTA board.
Yeah,
right.
CERTA board.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a spot that's currently held by Bruce, right?
It is. I'm taking the spot that Bruce representing San Juan County, and it kind of rotates between the counties. It'll then move after mine to Emory or Carbon.
Got it.
Part of that 4 counties that are involved in that group.
All right, that's great. How long is the appointment for? Is it like 2 years?
4 years.
4 years. Okay.
that's it for me.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Mary?
On the 7th, I had an Economic Opportunity Advisory Board workshop. We worked on using the recommendations from the Trail to Tomorrow to strengthen the economic portion of the general plan. Because we really don't want the Trail to Tomorrow to become just a document that isn't implemented and used. And by getting it part of the general plan, that will move it a little closer to being moved. On the same day, I had a Moab Housing Task Force meeting. Things are moving there. There's lots of talk about, what's happening in Arroyo Crossing. It's very exciting. Anybody that drives by there sees the changes. It's happening quickly. There was talk about, because it is the Moab Advisory Board, there's a lot of talk about maybe ways that they can do with the Walnut Lane. And hopefully we will be having some vouchers sooner than later. I went to on the 12th, I went to the arts unveiling at USU of their art to commemorate, to go along with their declaration that of the indigenous people that were here prior to us. Anyone, I recommend that if you're driving down there, you know, you can just walk in anytime. You don't have to have an appointment. I really recommend you go and look at the art piece. It is gorgeous. It is really a piece. It's beautiful. And it was a lovely ceremony. Music and really nice food. And it was a native, indigenous group from, from Monument Valley and Bluff that played the music. So, and lots of good music. It was gorgeous. So it was a very, very lovely
I
time.
was sad to miss that. I was conflicted that night.
Then we had there was a homeless board. The Four Corners intends to build a new receiving center on the recent, I just lost it. Okay. On a recently purchased a piece of property in Moab, which is adjacent to their campus. So that was very exciting. That was what came about a lot because some monies from the state that enabled them to buy an expensive piece of property in Moab that normally they could have never done. The Moab Valley Multicultural Center has winter gear to give away for people who are homeless. So, and they also have diversion funds are available for those who qualify. So if you happen to run into or know of anybody that is in need, please send them to the Multicultural Center.
Do you know if they take donations for winter gear? I'm thinking like
Oh, they would-
kids grow out of things. Yeah, great.
I think most of the people in the summer that end up being homeless are adults.
Sure,
but
sure.
They do have where they have clothes for kids during school and such.
Okay.
So yes, they would.
Great idea, yeah.
Very much like that. Sea Haven is pushing forward their expansion. There has a prevention grant which provides an opportunity to local indigenous communities with the Free Health Clinic. Moab Free Health Clinic has been building a relationship with the University of Utah Department of Psychology, where they're securing some funds to bring critical rotation to the Moab Free Health Clinic next year to give free psychiatric appointments will be available to qualified individuals. That's a big deal. I mean, if anybody's trying to go to therapy, they know it's not inexpensive and extremely hard in this community to even find an opening. So that the Free Health Clinic is working with the University of Utah to have this happen is great. I had a travel council meeting. We talked a lot about what went on at the travel council meeting during our budget hearing yesterday. It was really exciting to see the board so engaged and talk. Stephen was there with me. I thought it was one of the more productive meetings I've ever attended with the travel council. It was very rewarding. And then yesterday I met with Beth Logan and Lauren Rothman, who are working really hard on this issue with the van life people, the people that are in Moab. And this was a graph that they showed me that I wanted to share. As they did a survey, they really worked hard and did a survey with, I can't remember the exact number of people, but they went out and they surveyed the people who were in their vans and how they felt about what they were having. And as you can see here, do you have a reliable long-term place to park your van? The majorities don't, which and if they could have a place, what would they like? Here it shows they like bathrooms, Wi-Fi, laundry, dump station, electricity, garbage, a place for kitchen and personal space, to enhance rules. They have a long-term place to park your van is important to you. The majority of people really want to have a place to move their vans. And they're living in a communal environment is important to them as well. So I was excited that there's a group outside of the normal, legislative bodies and the people who are, elected, working very hard on this issue along with us. I encouraged them to join the housing task force. I told Lauren that would be very good, and I know they're already working closely with the planning department to see, and they're working to try funds so that they can help build, take advantage of our alternative housing overlay. As I see it fits really well. So they're working on finding ways to take advantage of that and to help create a place for people who tend to live in their vans. So then the rest was, everybody was at, it was our budget workshop, which have been very productive, and it's enjoyable to have Stephen on board, Stephen Valls. He's does a very good job, and it's, for me, it's also very rewarding to see what a strong and robust budget planning that we have in this county now compared to when I got on 10 years ago. It was,
Not to mention transparent.
yes, transparent. I mean, when for the first few years of my being a member of the commission pretty much rubber stamped what the budget clerk auditor brought to you. There was none of these robust discussions of going through and talking, and it's just nice sometimes to acknowledge improvement, and I think it's very exciting. That's my report.
Thanks, Mary. I definitely attended a few meetings this last couple of weeks. On the 12th, I attended a trail mix meeting. The major topic there was the discussion of the e-bike letter that eventually landed in the commission packet. That was the second meeting in a row that discussion happened during the trail mix meeting. I think there was a lot of there's a lot of passionate voices on every side there, and there's a lot of work and compromise that went into that final letter. So very much appreciate all the effort that Trail Mix went to comment on that. There was also a discussion of doing a Trails Report podcast or a report on KZMU. I think that would be pretty cool for trail reports during the season and off season. There was discussion of the Mud Springs Trail System, which is going to be a new trail system south of town that Grant County is collaborating with San Juan County and the BLM on creating. It sounds like GCAT is putting in for a $1.3 million outdoor rec initiative grant to keep it moving through the next couple of phases. And there's also a Trail Mix volunteer appreciation party tomorrow night at 7 o'clock at Dewey's. So I believe that will be going on until 10. There's music. Yeah, so if anyone wants to come out and pay homage to all of the great volunteers that worked on our trails over the last year, please do so. It should be fun. That's tomorrow night. Yeah, tomorrow night at 7. And then also, if you guys remember the last couple of years, Trail Mix has run and promoted the Spring Spruce Up, which works on trail projects all over the county on one day, and they chose a date for that just to get started early, and that date's going to be April 12th. So mark your calendars if that's of interest to you. It's a great event. I've participated in the last couple of them. It's super fun. All weekend thing. On the 13th, I attended the Chamber of Commerce meeting. The Chamber is looking for 1 or 2 new board members for 2025. So if you know somebody who's a member of the Chamber of Commerce and would like to participate there, have them contact the Chamber. to be considered. It's a great board. I've been on that board for the last 4 years as well, and it's one of my favorite boards. It's a very productive board. There's also a report on the banquet that was held. Unfortunately, I was traveling, so I wasn't able to go myself, but apparently it was a great success. Both fun and also it was thought to be the best fundraiser for the chamber in recent memory. So kudos to them on that. And also just reminding everybody that the chamber is putting on the Christmas tree lighting and the light parade on December 6th and 7th. Yes, Bill.
I'll update on that Mud Springs.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I
Go ahead.
forgot that I did attend
Okay.
another meeting, and that was with the Utah Outdoor Recreation Initiative Eastern Region. And Mud Springs, I think there were 5 or 6, but Mud Springs came in at number 1 in the ranking
Awesome.
after our meeting there. So if the grant comes through, it
Right.
at least stands a pretty good chance of that happening.
That's
So,
fantastic. Thanks, Bill. I attended on the same day I attended the Historic Preservation Committee meeting. A citizen who actually also works for the county, Tyson Swayze, brought to our attention that the historic DeBinky well, the windmill actually fell off. He was out riding his bike in the desert and saw that, and he started a Facebook page to kind of support restoring that historic site in the county. So there was talk in the committee about what we can do to facilitate that, as well as to create some signage and information out there to Binky Well. Also, the HPC talked about doing a survey inventory of county historic resources that would eventually go to inform the general plan through the Planning and Zoning Department. I, on the same day, also attended a museum meeting. There's a discussion of broadening the scope of the museum to the entire Colorado Plateau. There's also a large discussion about the upcoming U92 exhibit, which is going to be exhibiting all things uranium, and that's going to be kind of the marquee exhibit for the museum next year. It's going to be a great exhibit. They're looking at a February 15 opening with a member preview on the 13th. And it's also, there's going to be periphery events such as speakers. There's going to be field trips potentially to some of the sites put on by the museum, and other parts of that entire exhibit are under discussion. Also, I know quite a few people here attended the museum gala the last couple of years, so they did choose a date for that just to get out in front of it, and that date is going to be April 4th. And there's also going to be an event at Star Hall, a speaker event in conjunction with the gala on the 3rd. And then it was also discussed that the museum would love to get any donations on Giving Tuesday. So on Giving Tuesday, if anyone would consider donating to the museum, then please do so. I think I will be doing that. Let's see, I was unable to attend a TSSD meeting due to conflict, other meetings, but the budget was presented in a public hearing for TSSD and discussed at that meeting, and I believe it'll be up for approval at the meeting in December. And lastly, I was on a call, like Bill already mentioned this, but the discussion with USU and the SBDC, he and I were on a call with a couple of folks, Christian from there, and I'm stoked that we got that position kind of back in the fold. And that is the entirety of my report. We'll move on to elected official reports. So I turn it over to our county attorney, Steven.
Just also wanted to note at the Chamber of Commerce banquet, Sunset Grill was the business of the year.
Thank you,
And I
Steven.
think, CNHA.
Right, was the nonprofit.
Nonprofit of the
Yep,
year.
that's right.
Citizen of the year. I'm drawing a blank.
She's at the hospital, yeah, a long time. Who is it?
Georgia Russell.
Georgia Russell. Okay, thanks, Alicia. I appreciate it.
I attended the TCAB meeting, TCAB meeting that went very well. Been attending budget meetings. And then an interesting event that happened this weekend. We've been working, a shout out to Quinn, Bill Jackson, the Sheriff's Department, in my office. We helped set the groundwork or the mechanism to make sure the protest could happen this weekend. We've never had, there was a protest on Cane Springs regarding the development. It's a curious thing because the county doesn't really have a structure set up for a First Amendment parade or a protest. And so we didn't really have any mechanism to do that, to close down the roadway or anything like that. And so Bill Jackson was great to meet with us multiple times with the applicant. Quinn was helpful as well to meet, and the sheriff's department, because we had to kind of come together because the county has to allow protests to happen. And so in the future, one day we'll probably have to talk about setting it up, because we kind of started off having them go under the special events permits, but we can't charge them any money because they're not on the fee schedule. And we haven't usually had protests, so it was a learning experience,
Right.
but I think it went off without a problem or hitch. I called law enforcement. They didn't seem to have any issues, but it was a protest, and they'd reached out. Mr. Cooley was the name that put it on, and they did, I think they did well. So I don't know what the outcome was, but I didn't hear too much of it, but it did take Quinn, Bill Jackson, and the sheriff's department meeting with us, and I think they utilized some BLM land to be able to put on the protest. So.
And I assume there's law enforcement there to
Yeah,
observe.
they did have to pay for 2 deputies to be there, and there was a fee required for when you do a road closure, when you have to have law enforcement there for events. But that would be something in the future that we don't have very many protests like that in the future, but theoretically, if people want to close down a road to do a marching parade or something like that, we have it set up for special events, like when they do the 5K or the 5 mile, but we don't really have a mechanism set up for protests. So,
So what triggers the, excuse me, the necessity of a permit? Is it that they wanted to close the road?
well, on that stretch of land, they were looking at having about 100 or 200 people to be on that roadway, and there's no shoulder, there's no sidewalk.
Okay.
And so we were looking at a safety concern, because there's nowhere for 100 or 200 people to go. And then we also looked at, they were going to shuttle people back and forth. And the idea originally was they'll have parking here, the protest location here. They were going to have a crosswalk, and that triggers, under Bill Jackson was walking us through the requirement to have somebody certified in doing a crossing guard. Then you'd have to do proper signage on the, I think it's 100 yards up, but there's quite the process to do that. And the reason why it triggered was because it was going to close down the roadway to do all that.
But the county doesn't have like an explicit list of
No.
things. Okay.
No, and that's why when they reached out to us, we started talking to them about how do we do this as safe as possible. And I was imagining having 100 people crossing the road there with all the vehicles. And so eventually what they decided to do was, instead of having the BLM land that was right next to or butting the property, they just did it on the one side and then didn't have people crossing the road. And so that reduced the amount of scrutiny, but we still had some support there. And then the other issue was, if anybody got hurt, normally for the special events, we have EMS, radios, porta potties, the whole 9 yards. But since we don't have anything in statute, we don't have the ability to require a lot of things. So it was a good faith effort to work with us. And they started contacting us back in July of this year. And then they followed up later in the fall. And Bill Jackson was great, worked with us, walked us through, all the signage. Whenever you do a crosswalk, you want to have the safety protocol. There's actually a whole guide and book, and how many feet and the color and what the sign says, and the whole 9 yards. And so that was an additional undertaking. So I appreciate them, and I'm glad everybody was safe. So, but in the future, I'll probably bug the commission again for us having a more formalized process for parades or that things. But since the county land is so unique, that usually we don't trigger people wanting to do protests. So.
Do you know if the sheriff's office did a head count?
I don't know. I guess they have Instagram and said that like 100 people showed up, or 200.
Oh, so this is the past weekend, not this next.
Yes, it was Sunday.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks, Steve. Is that it?
That's it.
All right. I don't think Jameson is with us, but I do see Larry from Congressman Curtis's office is online, and I was wondering if Larry had something that he wanted to share with us. Go ahead and unmute Larry if you want to. No? Okay. Yep. Larry, you're still muted. Did you have anything you wanted to add? Okay. I just noticed his camera was on this time.
No,
Oh, there we go.
I'm unmuted finally. I didn't want to do it. I don't really have a whole lot to do or to say rather than just that the congressman and his office is busily engaged in transitioning, getting prepared for the Senate, and looking forward to that. So
That's great, Larry. Are you going to be with Senator Curtis come the new year as well?
it looks like it.
Fantastic.
That's the plan at this point in time.
Okay, great. And you'd still be hanging out with us down here in Grand County, Larry?
I told him that's what I wanted to do.
Glad to hear it. All
Yeah,
right, well, thank you.
That's what it looks like it's shaping up for.
Perfect. Okay. All right, let's see. We're on to administrator reports. I'm sorry, Quinn, I almost forgot you.
That's okay. I'm easy to forget. A lot of the same meetings you guys have all been to, lots of other staff issues that have come up and kind of bubbled up the surface in the last few weeks, but nothing to report. So,
Okay. All right, it looks like we're at the end of our general reports. We'll move on to our general business action items, discussion and consideration of approval. And the first item on our list is the request for tax forgiveness for parcel 04-0026-0008. And this one is it Sue Shriver and David Luers? Okay. Okay, great, welcome.
You're lucky you're so high up on the list here, number one. You won't have to sit all night.
Appreciate that. Commission Chair, Commission members, my name is David Luers. I live at mile marker 21.9, County Road 107, Cisco. But you won't get to my house from Cisco. It doesn't work. My wife Sue and I purchased the Picture Gallery Ranch in April of 2021 during the COVID scare. Picture Gallery Ranch has 3 homes on 850 acres. It sits on the Utah-Colorado state line. It's in an area referred to as the Dolores Triangle. I think we're the only full-time county residents east of the Colorado, north of the Dolores River.
Right. Okay.
And so I've got you an audience here, so I'll probably just keep rattling on because I don't get a chance to talk to people too often. So I'll keep going. The county services are minimal where we are located. We strive to be self-sufficient, knowing that the logistical difficulties of reaching our ranch. This fall, we received a notice from the Moab Fire Department. They intend to annex our ranch into their fire protection district. As a retired firefighter, I had to laugh because I knew the response route and time to get to our ranch would be exactly what we traveled to get here to this meeting, 150 miles in 2.5 hours. We have to go through Grand Junction to get here. I called the county assessor's office to determine which tax documents that we get every year to calculate the added tax burden this annex would be. And it was during that conversation that I learned all 3 of our homes are categorized as second homes, including our primary residence. So the next day, my wife Sue here contacted the assessor's office to start the process to change the status of our primary residence. When she asked about the overpayment, she was told that we missed the deadline for protesting the county assessment. So she continued to press and ask what other recourses we had and was referred to this meeting to get an audience with the county commission and plead her case. So here we are. We're requesting the return of the property tax payments that were in excess of the primary tax rate.
And that's just on the primary house, is that right?
Yes.
Just on the one.
This is the one house.
So that it's now to have it on the primary rate, as a primary residential rather than secondary.
That's correct. The way I understand it is during COVID, things weren't handled exactly the way they normally were. There's a lot of email, a lot of phone, not very much in person. We didn't receive a document that I guess was crucial that said this is our primary residence. You had 30 days to do that. And so that's what we're asking is to make that change now And the other part was that we have to prove that we live in the county during that whole time. And Sue here has several documents, but we have no other residents. I think it's a little strange for me just because I've never had two properties at this different states. And so when I purchased property, I guess I always assumed it would be your primary residence. And I realize now that not everybody lives that way, that a lot of people have two homes and travel different places, but to have it default to secondary, which is a 45% higher tax rate, just seems a little strange to me.
Bill,
Yeah, I move to approve tax forgiveness in the amount of $2,216.90 for parcel 04-0026-0008 as presented by Sue and Dave.
Mary seconds. Okay, motion is made by Commissioner Winfield, second by Commissioner Gann. I had a different number in mind. It was, you said 2216 and mine says 2212. Is that Oh, okay. Yeah, I must not have
Who's got
refreshed.
Correct. Do I need to change the dollar amount?
Is it 16? While we're doing that, Stephen had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, the assessor's not here and I always have to be the bearer of bad news or try to argue what the law is. There's a notice was sent out in July of each year and there's a deadline of September 16th to be able to apply for the exemptions. That's the requirement that we have set out in our statute. This has been the same. My office is always going to have the same position on these before. I've made the same comments on previous ones. I would just caution the commission on doing this. If we continue to allow individuals to miss deadlines and then follow up and ask for forgiveness, it does create the perception that other people could miss deadlines and come back here seeking this type of recourse. I know the assessor was against it. I got forwarded some emails about it. I'm not the assessor, but whenever we have deadlines and notices that are sent out, I would encourage the commission to keep consistency on these issues. But as always, the commission is the ultimate decider, and I made these arguments the last time we had a similar circumstance, but that's my job is to point out deadlines in black and white. You guys get to be the humans in the room.
Thanks. Appreciate that, Stephen.
Did I have the correct number?
Okay, so Bill did have the correct one. Okay, yeah.
And I appreciate that our attorney is always looking out for the county's best interest, but again, I'm going to stand on the motion.
Mike?
Question with the assessor, who's not present is, upon, sale of all properties, is it is automatically assumed, secondary residence? And how do we go about fixing that? Because this seems to come up every now and again.
Normally, it's the owner of the obligation is on them. I mean, when they purchase
Yeah,
land,
but
they
It's a
need,
question from the title company,
sure, but it's
like primary residence.
right, but it's sometimes they may choose, we don't know what's in their real estate portfolio that it may benefit them to choose something else. So that's why there's documentation that they need to finalize and file.
Right.
To get that benefit, but I'm not the assessor, so I'm again.
I also, thanks Stephen for making it, I think it was important that someone represent that point of view, so thanks for doing that. On the other hand, I think it's good to be lenient, not everyone, county has all these rigid deadlines and things like that, but most people are just living their lives. It's to me very understandable that they might, fail to see the second page of some letter that they received from the county. So I support the motion. I do think if there were to be a flood of these, like every other meeting we have this, then I think that is a reason to start strictly enforcing the deadlines like the assessor and Stephen are advocating for, but I don't think we've reached that point yet, so.
For the record, I think this is the second one we've had this year.
I thought it was this year or a couple years
I
ago.
believe we had one earlier this year. Yes, sir. It's all blended together. It does. It tends to.
To your point, we never got a letter in the mail. It's lovely, amazing piece of paper that we had to fill out. Never seen it before. Didn't know it existed for a month ago. And we live in Cisco, Utah, but there's no mail that goes to Cisco, Utah. So I don't know where it goes when people mail and stuff to Cisco, Utah. But if they don't mail it to Glade Park,
But do you get your tax notice in the mail?
well, but I have to have it mailed to Colorado.
Okay, but somewhere in that tax notice says if you disagree with the tax, you know,
Yes,
in the fine print.
yes,
So,
I'll agree with you.
yeah, so if I were the assessor, I would say you should have read every word of that notice and complained years ago. Yeah.
Yeah,
And you guys received mail in Glade Park,
We do.
Colorado. Okay.
yeah, right, okay.
That's also what makes it, I think it might have been reasonable for the assessor to assume it was a second home since your mailing address was in Colorado.
It's a pain.
Yeah.
We have 3 addresses and it's.
Yeah, I understand. I'm gonna vote for the motion.
Okay, it looks like I have a motion on the table from Bill and a second from Mary. Unless anyone has anything further to say, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Favorable, so, and that motion passes unanimously. Thank you all.
Thank you very
Have a
much.
safe trip home.
Safe trip home.
All right, we're on to agenda item 2, independent contractors agreement for the replacement of the lobby doors at the old Spanish Trail Arena. And I believe Angie is online for this one. Welcome, Angie.
Can you guys see me?
We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Oh,
It looks like you have, you have a.
There we go. sorry,
All
that happened quick. I didn't think I was gonna get to come on this quickly. So yes, the lobby doors.
Yep. You just froze, Angie. I don't know if you said anything. Your last words were the lobby doors.
Okay. Yeah, so tonight I'm presenting the lobby doors. And this project has been something that has been ongoing, and it's just to the point where it's time to get them replaced. So the original doors, metal, they're rotting out. And the reason why they're so expensive is because I do have to bring in 2 different contractors to get them replaced. Because the doors are full of concrete. So I have one contractor that comes in that will do demo, and then one contractor that comes in and actually replaces the door. The rec board is willing to split the cost with the county if the county is willing to do that. So that is what my request is for tonight.
Thanks, Angie. Any
Mhm.
questions for Angie?
So this is an amendment to the 2024 budget, or have we?
Yes.
is this- Okay, so this,
Okay, and half of it does get paid by the rec board, you said.
Yes.
Great. Mary?
I move to approve the independent contract agreement with Rick's Glass and Kevin Bowden Construction for the plate replacement of the lobby doors at the old Spanish Trail Arena in the amount of $21,041.
And Bill seconding. All right, Mike, you had something to say?
At this point, with the doors completed and the roof, is the structure watertight?
I was gonna say you missed the last meeting, didn't you, Mike?
Yes.
Unfortunately, I've had to call the roofers back. So the roofers have been back and we still have water coming in. Not currently. They've called in a specialist and have done some more work. But we did have water come in with the last storm.
That's fortunate.
Yeah.
At least we're working towards the watertight here with the doors. I do know,
Yeah.
if anyone doesn't know the backstory of this, when it rains, water comes through the front doors and they have to catch it with towels. And or mops and or staff in the middle of the night. So.
Yeah.
All right, hopefully we'll remedy that soon. Anyone else have any comment on this one? All right, Mary made the motion and Bill seconded it, I believe. Oh, Evan, go ahead.
That was one of the vendors that we're not going with came in at a lower rate, and I was just curious about what the higher rate had to offer.
I think it was because of disposal of the doors, and then just overall knowledge of the doors. The other one has never dealt with these type of doors before.
I like the idea of rec board kicking in for it, so.
Yeah.
Appreciative to them with that, and I know this has been on the list before, I was supportive of course.
Yeah, I think it's been something that's been the list for a while. All right, I think Mary made the motion, Bill seconded. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hands. And that passes unanimously. Thank you,
Thank
Angie.
you. Thank you.
All right, on to agenda item 3, second extension for Red Tail Air to begin construction on their new FBO building at the airport. FBO is fixed base operator, and that's lot 96 in the northern portion. And I believe Tammy is on Zoom to join us. And Tammy, would you speak to this?
All right, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Tammy.
All right. So this is just Red Tail seeking a second extension on the requirement that they have to build their FBO building within a certain amount of time. The airport board has voted to approve this. And so here we are. Any questions on that? I can explain more if you want, but it's pretty simple.
Bill?
Sure, I can give both a little bit of background and also I'll make the motion. I move to approve the second extension for Red Tail Air to begin construction on their new FBO building at the airport. And multiple reasons why they're looking for an extension. Economy, upheaval within their own corporation, or maybe upheaval's not the right word, but restructuring a little bit, and it just hasn't happened in the time frame that they were looking at.
Okay, and it'll say Mike seconded your motion.
Had to be Kevin.
I would just ask if the motion should include length of time or a date.
It wasn't in the
There's
It's in the.
there is a timeline on the extension.
June 20th, 2025.
Yes.
6 months. I just didn't know if we needed that in the motion.
I'm glad to put it in there. So the date is June 20th. Is that correct?
That's correct, Bill.
25, the
Yes.
extension. To June 20th.
And that gives them a 6-month extension from the previous deadline. Okay, and Mike seconded the motion. Any other questions or comments on this one? All right, call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hands. And that passes unanimously. Okay, so item 4, voluntary appointment to the airport board. And this one is also Tammy as well as Commissioner Winfield.
Yes, airport board had a position opened due to a resignation. We had quite a turnout of applications, and they've all been included in this agenda item. Ultimately, the airport board voted to appoint or to recommend Rachel Paxman as the new airport board member with your approval.
Thanks, Tammy. Mike?
I'd like to make the motion. I move to approve the appointment of Rachel Paxman to serve on the airport board with term expiring December 31st, 2026.
Mike, Bill, second? All right, great.
So did the board give reasons for their preferred candidate?
There's a letter, the recommendation letter
Sorry.
on there, I think gave,
I think
or actually,
No, there is.
a lot of different reasons. I know that the fact that she's working for Contour gives them a little bit of representation on the board. I don't think that was the main reason, but there were so many qualified. In fact, there was nobody that wasn't a good option to sit on that board. So it just came down to kind of a straw poll as to who's going to win out.
Okay, so it was a close call, but you had to decide on someone, and that's where it ended up.
In that letter, it says the board voted unanimously to recommend the county commission appointment of Rachel Paxman.
Yes.
I guess I was just, I don't know, I apologize, I've never paid much attention to the airport board, but, there's a lot of different interests out there. There's like, the passenger traffic, the commercial flyers, there's lots of different things. I don't know if the board makes an effort to always have, like, just representatives from different stakeholders or how that works.
I would say the representation is pretty broad out there. I know that there are private pilots that sit on the board. There will now be clearly Contour. Randy Martin sits on the board, who used to basically represent the CEO. So I think it's very broad. There's Laurel Cato. She's, I think, a lawyer. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tammy, who this is just her
Yes.
second home.
Yeah,
That's
she's an
on the
attorney.
board. So it's pretty broad. It isn't any one segment, sure.
There was a lot of Rachel's background is local business in Moab, as well as her experience working for airlines. She's worked for SkyWest previously here in Moab, as well as in Grand Junction. And then now she's back here in Moab, she's the GM for Contour. So she does have that background, that aviation background.
Thanks. And it is nice to see so many applicants for one of these board positions. Sometimes, many times, there's only one. So having a lot of people interested, I think, is a good thing.
Definitely.
All right, let's see. I think Mike made the motion to approve. Bill seconded. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hands. And that motion passes unanimously. Thanks, Tammy.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right. Next up is agenda item 5, and that is the Grant County letter for the BLM scoping period regarding Class 1 e-bike use. I am presenting this. So this was the BLM presented a scoping period for comment. We're actually outside of the scoping period, but they indicated that Grant County, as a cooperating agency, recommendation would be considered. We do have, so I wrote the letter that's in the packet that's titled the Grant County Commission e-bike letter. We have 3 great advisory committees that kind of this falls under their purview more or less. For 3 years, I sat on the Motorized Trail Committee. I'm not currently that representative. I think Bill is. I am the Trail Mix Committee person. And I think, Evan, you're the Sand Flats rep. Okay, so we heard from Sand Flats Stewardship Committee, Motorized Trail Committee, as well as the Trail Mix Committee. And then Maddie from our GCAT department also provided an overview so that people could kind of get familiar with the topic. I think I'm extremely familiar with this topic. I actually, back in 2016, I think I was the first business in Moab to start selling and renting e-bikes. And I also helped form a kind of a subcommittee or ad hoc committee discussing e-bikes along with Cliff Coons and Colin Topper from the Motorized Trail Committee and Trail Mix to kind of get in front of the e-bike issue. And we delved into a lot of e-bike issues. When I wrote the letter, I considered all 3 opinions. As far as the Sand Flats opinion goes, I think that Andrea and her crew do a great job of working on their trails up there. I think her letter was extremely well written, and it was the result of a conversation with the entire stewardship committee. So I wanted to respect that, and it's also kind of a smallish area of the entire scope that the BLM is discussing. So I kind of opted to send that letter on in its entirety to the BLM along with ours. And when I wrote our letter, hey, Andrea, you can you can come forward if you want. So, and then I did as I mentioned earlier, the Trail Mix Committee discussed this for 2 meetings. We had very robust conversations and considered many different points of view and aspects. And I think they came forward with a very kind of measured and reasonable idea about what to put forward to the BLM, and that was to consider the Moab Brands area as kind of a test mountain bike area for Class 1 e-bike use, and the reasons for that are in the Trail Mix letter, and I I kind of copy and pasted those into the letter that I wrote. I also really appreciate the Motorized Trail Committee and their letter, and I used a little bit of their language as well and made some, just passed on some recommendations that they wrote concerning future electrified two-wheeled use for consideration as well as some other comment on e-bikes. So anyway, the result of that is the letter that you'll find in the packet, and that is the letter that I personally support sending to the BLM, and I'd open up the discussion. I'll let Andrea speak since you're here. No one's raising their hand real quick.
Adam's like waiting for me to text her, so hopefully she's gonna join online if she wants to. But we had a special meeting with the stewardship committee back when we first heard about this. And the committee unanimously voted to write, for this letter.
Yes.
As written. So we would like at this time for the BLM to know that we're not in support of e-bikes being on the Raptor route.
On the Raptor route, right?
And that's really the only one for consideration in Sandflats, because all the other routes
Are
open
motorized.
to e-bikes.
Right.
And a lot of that was just the history of that trail when I can remember when Kimberly Shepard was on the stewardship committee and the Burrito Trail was called that at the time, was proposed, and she had said we need to have something that's bringing the non-motorized users back to Sandflats, because we were starting to see all the UTVs and we're just having a lot of motorized and supposed to be mixed use. So that was the history of the Raptor route, was as a non-motorized trail, something for those non-motorized mountain bikers and hikers. And so the history of it was important. And, as we say in the letter, 78% of the trails are open to e-bikes right now. They're not single track, but, and then also just the confusion with the fact that Eagle Eye, which is the top part of the Raptor route in Sandflats, is partially on
Forest, right.
So people would have to start at Hawks Fly,
Yes.
just further down, which would be confusing.
Yeah.
And then just other concern that potentially there could be, conflicts with other users. So.
Thanks, Andrea. Yeah. Yeah, and I considered all those things when I added them into the letters.
Yes, I liked your letter.
Maddie, you can might as well come forward.
Sorry, Matt.
My computer was like trying to re-download Zoom now of all times, so here I am.
Okay, great.
My tear
I was just in the office. So
Oh, you
it's
were
not
too?
good.
Yeah.
Kevin, you had your hand up?
I was just gonna make the motion to approve the letter that's in the packet that Jacques just described.
Okay.
And do you want, no, I was gonna make the motion, but I was gonna add to the motion to also attach the Sandflat Recreation Stewardship letter.
That's actually in the letter. Yeah, I actually, wrote that
Well, that's what I read.
Okay.
I got confused When I read it, I thought, oh, but,
So is that a second, Mary, then?
yes, that's a second.
Okay.
And I wanna thank, Jacques for, that's hard work. I mean, that's why I'm not quick to volunteer to write letters, because, it's stressful. You get people to edit them. You're always worried that you're not gonna say something correctly. And so I appreciate the effort that was put into finding a balanced, I felt like it really took the information from the for the motorized and the non-motorized trails letters together. So I thought it was really balanced. So I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mary. Anybody else like to make comment or have questions for Maddie's here as well from GCAT?
Have we, sorry, not Maddie and GCAT, sorry. Up on Sandflats, what were the conflicts that were actually found? Because it, as a e-bike rider, I would find it confusing that if I was on a trail where most all other trails are e-bike accessible or allowable, if I was on a trail and got set, that would be the conflict. I don't know any other user conflicts unless I was on one of those trails that I didn't know was not allowable. Like what conflicts happen with an e-bike versus other single track user?
Yeah, I think just, there's a lot of unknowns. I mean, in general, I think that Maddie's section in the packet talked about there hasn't been, that many studies. And, there's a lot of unknowns of what the conflicts are as far as to the resource and the conflicts between the visitors. As far as things we've seen so far, we have had complaints from, regular mountain bikers about e-bikers on the trail.
And not to get into specifics, because I don't need it, but what's the how do they complain against each other?
They could be going faster, and the way that they're passing, and so speed can be a situation, and then because you have more passing, you might have more damage to the resource. And
Also, like I've encountered e-bikes actually on that trail, and sometimes the trail is not currently a directional trail. I think that may be coming in the future. But e-bikes can go, most of the traffic is coming down that trail, but I've seen e-bikes going up the trail at relatively high speeds. There's a lot of corners and such where you can have head-on-head encounters, and those encounters with e-bikes are much more likely to have a lot more speed than they are with the folks who are on non-e-bikes. And I've personally experienced that.
I think a lot of it too has to do with like the leapfrogging, whereas a e-bike can climb faster and pass an analog bike, and oftentimes the skill level of e-bikers are different, and so then on the descent, the analog bike ends up leapfrogging the e-bike again, and now they're in the front, and then they come to the next hill, and then the e-bike. So it's like if you had a motorboat and a canoe in a river, and you just kind of keep,
I understand that, but that seems to be more of an issue, at least in my mind. It seems to be more of an issue of people being nice instead of what they're riding. I mean, it would.
And I think to that point that for a long time, locally, there's been hesitation to put in the e-bikes on non-motorized trails. And I respect the BLM for looking at this test area. And I think that this actually is a change from this body and others to say, yes, let's test it out, and let's answer some of these questions of like, what is that? But rather than doing it, district wide and then trying to undo it later and restrict it, this letter kind of highlights focusing in an area, the Brands trails, where there's it makes sense to kind of try, if you're going to try in a small area, that is an area that kind of makes sense, rather than one where it's butting up to the Forest Service, where the Forest Service doesn't allow any e-bikes, and this is kind of a standalone non-motorized trail in Sand Flats. And so I think that because it's a test, and maybe it gets adopted and maybe it doesn't, that it makes a lot of sense to do it in a small place or a smaller place, and that the Brands trails, with its proximity to town and the ease of using the bike path to get there and go to other trails from the bike trails, its proximity to the sovereign trails that allow e-bikes and future wrapped around, it just makes sense for test area. And I'll admit that when I first came up, when this ask from the BLM first came up, my initial response was to kind of put my guard up and kind of stick to the guns that we have done for a long time of keeping non-motorized trails non-motorized. And so I have warmed up to the idea, and I think that the Brands is a great test area for it, and it's almost hard to admit that pivot and allowing more e-bikes and our non-motorized trails. So I'm also curious to see what results come from the test, so that we have more answers to those questions.
Yeah, I'll go to Bill, and then I'll get you, Maddie. Or did you want to respond to something Mike said? Or-
Yeah, and I may have misunderstood, but I think the comments that came across in this letter and that I heard at the stewardship committee is that Sand Flats is a little bit unique in that it does butt up against the Forest Service, like the top of Eagle Eye Trail is in the Forest Service. But then there's also Porcupine Rim Single Track Trail, which is in wilderness study area. So those two trails are essentially like off the table, like they're not part of this BLM scoping period. And so that, just thinking at it from like I think e-bikes are generally like an extremely confusing issue, and then also how it's been communicated to the public. It's really confusing. So if you're an e-bike owner and you're trying to figure out where to ride, there's a lot of conflicting information. And so then looking at this area in Sand Flats that is going to have its own level of nuance of like, okay, you can go on these certain trails, but maybe not above, not what they connect to necessarily. It's just a consideration for like, how would that be communicated? And, you know, would we be setting people up basically for success in this particular area? So that was, I think, part of the conversation on the stewardship committee meeting. It's confusing, basically.
And then, like we were talking about, well, Maddie was talking about a section about just how really the studies that have been done are not really in line with our environment here.
Yeah, and I mean, so the studies I've seen, and maybe there's some I'm not aware of, but it does seem like there's not very many that are maybe like unnatural surface trails similar to ours. And so that's something we've been working with UDOT to do. So they were here this summer. They're here this fall. We're hoping to get them back in the spring to do just some more data gathering. And they look at things like you're talking about, like what the potential user conflicts might be with, they actually look at not just like the average speeds on trails, but they really look at average speeds like in certain features, because that's, you know, for a mountain bike trail, I think that's what's important for us to understand for thinking about like what adjustments to the infrastructure we would need to make, or like the, you know, designating one ways, or you know, ongoing maintenance. So
Yeah, a lot of turns on mountain bike trails might be designed for like a 8-mile-an-hour speed, and yet e-bikes with the assist can hit 20 miles an hour before they hit their governor. So I mean, there's a lot of ins and outs. It's a super complicated issue. It's something that I've been looking at for almost 10 years being in the industry, and we certainly don't have all the answers. They're viable machines. They're fun. And I think this is a good opportunity to kind of ease our way in and really get to know them and see what the effects could be. Bill?
Yeah, I several things. I mean, some of it from the motorized trail committee, some of it just from myself. I don't even own an e-bike. I don't see myself ever owning one, but I'm not of the age that they might look a lot better in another 15 years. Who knows? But there are a lot of people with disabilities, and I just applaud you for at least keeping a portion of it open. I think that there's going to be less conflicts than a lot of people like to make that there is. I can also see Jacques' point and people accident prone if the corners of some of those trails aren't to the speeds that an e-bike can go to. But there's a vast majority of Americans right now that are trying to get outside, and e-bikes allow that. And so I just hope that we keep a very, very open mind. I know that not all mountain bike trails, but a lot of them used to be motorized, some of which I used to ride on a motorbike. So there's room for people to work both sides of this. So I just hope we keep a very open mind. And you mentioned user conflict, and I'm curious about where the Raptor Trail, doesn't it cross Fins and Things, or one of the motorized trails up there in the Sand Flats area? So we've built in some conflict there that I hope that we're very careful about and keep an eye on, because again, motorized was up there long before the mountain bike users were. And so we're building some of the conflict into these trails, and I just want to keep a very open mind about that.
Well, we have the same thing on Slick Rock. You're
Right.
crossing in 6 places the Halser Bench Trail.
Right.
So, but, you know, seem to have.
Which Slick Rock is still motorized, is it not?
Right, yeah. Right. But the Raptor is a new trail.
Yeah. System was built starting in 2020.
Just
Matt?
a clarifying point, because this is one of the things that gets really confusing, but there is actually an allowance for people with disabilities to already use e-bikes. So you don't need to go, so this is sort of a separate scoping process for anyone who doesn't have a disability, but there is currently a way for, to get a letter, if you have a disability to use your e-bike.
It's called reasonable modification and anyone can apply to the BLM for that letter. And that is addressed in my letter as well. Cool.
And then one thing I'll just put out to the commission is food for thought, which is I think the one thing that makes this conversation about e-bikes or like the issue of e-bikes really confusing is that there's it's basically all regulated state by state and there's no federal sort of like consistency, and also there's no federal consistency in how e-bikes are marketed. So right now if you go and you're like, I want to buy an e-bike, and you go online, it's actually really confusing to figure out if the bike you're looking at is a class 1 e-bike, class 2 or class 3 or something else that's maybe a mix of the different features. And so I think that just makes it hard for communities like ours to sort through this. Because you're kind of dealing with like this rapidly, amorphous changing technology. And I think we need maybe help as a community or collectively to try and figure out how to get up to that. Personally, I don't know how you reach those higher federal levels to figure out how to solve some of these problems, but I think that would just really make this a much more simple issue.
And that does come into play in a lot of places. I actually worked hard to get the bike path motorized my very first year on the commission, and we did pass that finally in 2021 because it was non-motorized before that for class 1. I literally ride that path 3 times a week. I'm up and down that all the time. And since we did legalize that for class 1, just for your information, if you didn't read the packet, class 1 is pedal assist only, no throttle, up to 20 miles an hour. I see class 2 e-bikes out on that, which is a throttle assist all the time. And when I see problems, and I've seen a crash in front of me, and it's usually those class 2 people on throttles going at 20 miles an hour that are causing the issues. And I don't know whether they know that they're not supposed to be there or not, but again, the differentiation there is somewhat confusing, and it's very hard to police, and that certainly creates conflicts, and I've seen those conflicts out on the trails without a doubt. Kevin?
I just wanted to point out that, there is we have lots of motorized trails in the county. That's pretty extensive, with the, a little bit of single track, but also just all the Jeep trails. And I think, back in the 80s, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the majority of the popular bike trails were in fact also Jeep trails at the same time. So those are still, it just seems like some of the conversations, like, the e-bikes are only going to have one tiny place they can go. There's quite, there's these mixed use trails, like, a lot of sand flats and elsewhere that is open to e-bikes.
This letter does call out adding to the current inventory of motorized options, so it rates saying let's build a trail for every.
And Mud Springs will be open to e-bikes, correct?
Yes.
That's what I was gonna ask also with the Utah Raptor State Park or the proximity of brands.
It's through, you have to ride on Copper Ridge Road to get there.
That road off the right. Okay, but Utah Raptor State Park will be.
It'll be motorized.
e-bike
It will, yep, certainly. Yeah.
They're already making.
Okay.
Yeah, and Dead Horse State Park is also e-bikes at 16 miles. That's where we usually recommend beginner and intermediate riders go.
A good thing too, when UDOT is doing a study, we were able to convince them to not just do the Slick Rock Bike Trail because it's such a unique area, but to go up and do Dead Horse, since they already have e-bikes and mountain bikes on the same trail. Well, like Slick Rock, but I mean, it's the same trail. So they're doing a study, they did a study there too this fall, and then hopefully they're gonna come back in the spring.
Yeah, Dead Horse is a little bit more representative of like the other, 170 plus miles of the track.
Sure. All right, any other comments before I call for a vote? Let's see, Kevin made the motion to approve and Mary seconded. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hands. And the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Maddie and Andrew, appreciate it.
Thanks for the explanations, really.
Conversation.
That confusing it branches into me also, so.
Yeah,
It is.
a lot of research.
All right, we're on to agenda item 6, and let's see, letter of support for the Matheson Wetland Enhancement Drought Mitigation Project. Trish wrote the letter. She's not here, so I guess I'm presenting. Anyway, you guys have seen the letter, and it is for the grant, I think, from the Bureau of Reclamation to use that the water that comes out of the water treatment plant to refresh the wetlands. Is that correct?
This is to the same sort of grant that it was we had a letter of support for this as well.
It's an application of the
Same. Right. Yeah, thanks.
Stephen?
Can I ask a random question? If there's a schedule to open up the wetlands for use anytime
I
soon?
have no idea. Yeah, I wouldn't know.
You mean the bridge from the one?
Oh, the bridge to nowhere?
Yeah, well,
Right, yeah.
taken.
I know I used to use the bridge all the time, but yeah, hike up there.
I was just curious.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know if it's closed from access from the, yeah.
Oh, you can certainly access it from 4th North. I walk down there all the time. So you can go down 4th North and.
I wasn't sure if I was trespassing.
Yeah. I don't.
Look at yourself.
I don't think so. That's one of the routes that, I live on that street, so we get down there frequently. and
I
just
think
kinda-
it's just the nature of the bridge, so they
Right.
have that parking lot closed.
Yeah, I think that's right. Good. Sure, Bill.
I move to approve the letter of support for the Matheson Wetland Enhancement Drought Mitigation Project.
Thank you, Bill. Kevin, seconds. All right, discussion on this one?
Adding
Yeah.
treatments we can pump over there. The plan is to add treatment methods. So it can be over there instead, or just literal plan is putting pipe over there.
Oh, I'm not sure exactly what the plan is. I think the grant would go towards probably making the plan as well as facilitating it.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see a little more detail of what they do plan, but I know that they've got to treat it in order for it to be used. I also know that there are water rights on that effluent, and so there'll be a little bit of discussion in the future also.
Okay.
The potential for, I believe, WISA owns some of that and different entities that provide effluent to
Back into the Colorado.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's arguments
So
on
there's water rights to
from
what
all
comes out.
sides, so.
Literally.
Literally.
Be away from.
All right. All right, any other further discussion before I call for a vote on this one? Looks like Bill made the motion, Kevin seconded it. All those in favor, raise your hand, and the motion passes unanimously. We are on to our last regular action item, agenda item 7, letter of support for the draft plan, environmental documentation or environmental document for Arches visitor access and experiences with Arches National Park. Again, I think you guys have seen this letter. Trish drafted it. There were comments on there, and I know Bill made some comments to that. So I would open it up for discussion, and maybe since Bill had the comments, I'd let you start that out, Bill.
Yeah, I'd actually like to just make the motion that we postpone this until we get that worked out, because nothing that was commented on or suggested being added was added into this. So as it stands, I think that we need to do some more work to it.
Do we know when this is due?
Not sure.
I don't. I know that just like the e-bike thing, I think we're submitting that late. They usually allow collaborating agencies to have a little bit of leeway there, but I still think that letter needs some work.
Do you know when that is due, Brian? It is 25th of November. Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, so
That give us time to.
so it'll be the 25th. That's Kevin.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I lean toward just approving this letter. I did read through the comments that you submitted, and I think there's 2 issues here. One is, are we going to endorse one of their 3 alternatives? I do think that alternative B makes sense. Reasons I will do later. And then the other issues just seem to maybe go beyond the the scope of just this letter, just bigger issues around like who's doing education and things like that. And that's certainly I think a dialogue we could have with Park Service, but I don't think it needs to go into, comment letter on a particular item. So I guess if I felt like we were converging towards some kind of agreement that everyone was happy with, it might make sense to play, but I have some pretty strong health views on these issues. I'm sure that further dialogue is some magic.
Mary?
I felt like we were responding to, which did we prefer, A, B, or C? It was, not a discussion, I think taking your points and perhaps writing a letter to the National Park Service as an independent, saying we would like we would like some sharing with the cost of this and that, this and that. But it seems like it's mixing. The question was, which one, of these three things do you support? I don't, I think the other issues you brought up would be better served in an independent letter. So, I support moving. I move to approve the letter of support for the draft plan environmental document for Arches visitors access and experience with Arches National Park.
In a second, Kevin. Okay. All right, motion to approve from Mary and a second from Kevin. Mike?
Even in this letter, none of my concerns were even taken to heart. Me actually watching people getting turned away. None of those people were actually surveyed on their feelings of being turned away. I do know for a fact, handfuls of people are turned away at the gate daily. I do not know how many of them return, but I do know it is physically slowing. The timed entry system is physically slowing people or restricting people the ability to get into the park, and none of that is okay. So
I disagree. I think it's facilitating people getting into the park. I remember back in the day when we had lines out beyond the highway. I used to actually, when the weather's nice, and actually even when it's not nice, I generally ride to Balance Rock or the Windows District on my bike once a week. And I saw more people get turned away when they just shut the park down because the line got too long. I saw way more people get turned away. They just stopped the line and they wouldn't open the park until that number of people left, which is frequently, if I was riding in at like 10 o'clock, then they wouldn't let people back in until 2 or 3 o'clock. So I think there was a lot more people who were turned away before the reservation system than after.
why would we not be writing a letter to Arches that says, hey, we support any ability for you to get more staff, more parking spots, more roadway, instead of, again, limiting. Why would we not be partnering with them to get more in any way? I would love to partner with Arches in any way to allow more people to visit Arches, including myself, but restricting.
Yeah, I think we've discussed this, many times over the years, and I guess one difference with this discussion is we have a few more years of on the ground experience with the reservation system. But I agree with Jacques. I think it's it might be nice if just everything had infinite capacity and everyone could go there and find a parking space anytime they wanted to. But that's not the world we live in. It's kind of finite capacity. We've seen what it's like to just have no regulations, which I think is one of the three alternatives they look at, the reservation system. That's what we were doing a few years ago, and it doesn't work well. The Park Service's theory is if the reservation system allows people to coordinate their visiting times so that not everybody shows up at 10 a.m., whatever the popular time is. And so one of the other alternatives they are considering is just you can enter at any time during the day. I think that kind of loses out on the advantages of present reservation system, which again, spreads it out in theory, similar. I think Park Service claims greater. I don't know if it's actually happening. So it's not, given how popular the park is and how much the state and Green County to a lesser extent have been marketing it. Something's gotta give. I think there are parks around the country that have reservation systems, recently enacted, so it's not unique to us. And that's how, even outside public lands, something becomes popular, then you have to have some way to control access. They're like the rivers, you used to be able to float down the river anytime you wanted to. And that became untenable, and so now there's a permit system, and I don't think anyone wants to go back to unregulated rivers. Somehow, getting as many boats as we possibly can. So I guess the point I'm making is that these are issues that come up over and over again, about crowding, public lands and access. I think the park solutions, the park's current system is a good sort of solution.
Stephen had a comment.
Yeah, just for the viewers, we're talking items A, B, C, etc. If you click on the agenda summary, you can go down into background and it has a blue hyperlink that says here. You click on that, and then that brings you to the national parks page. Then you have to scroll all the way down to the bottom to document content, and then it's the second item, and then it'll open a PDF, and then you go up 2 pages, and then there's the A, B, and C. So if we're referring to options A, B, and C, the general public may or may not know what items A, B, and C are. I was just pointing that out, but if you follow those steps, you can reach it. It's on page 3 of that PDF.
Thanks, Stephen. Bill?
Yeah, I just think that there are so many inaccuracies in the letter itself, let alone the inaccuracies of the information that the Park Service hasn't fully disclosed to the public. And so for us on top of that to send out a letter that really isn't accurate, there's no way that I can vote in favor of it. There's so many things that we need to look at in this letter to adjust, and I just think it needs some time rather than sending something off that's half-baked.
I'm supportive of the letter. I think we've looked at a similar situation for the last 3 years, and I think that the Park Service has done a good job of addressing some of the concerns. I know there was changes made after the first year and into the second and third years. Yeah, and we've had a lot of time to kind of try this out, get used to it, and from where I've stood as a visitor, of someone who's brought lots and lots of friends who've come to the county into the Arches National Park, from someone who's sat behind the desk of a Main Street business and sent people to the national park in the last few years. I think alternative B is the best alternative of the 3 presented. Mike?
In the willingness to hear both sides there, we were offered the chance to support trying it out. We were forced to try it out for 2 years, 3 years running now. Why are we not allowing the chance to try it out back the other way, of opening it back up to see if it really was better? The try was kind of forced upon us by their decision. It wasn't we didn't have a say in a minority group, didn't have a say in that original try. We should have, or we should at least get the try to chance back to change it how it was. But
I think my memory is that there's a lot of community outreach. I remember that the Chamber of Commerce weighed in, we weighed in, quite a few other local entities weighed in. The try was every year up until 2020. I mean, we had a ton of time to try, and I think this is it's a good solution based on the issues that were massive issues back in those eras of huge long lines and then the park shutting down for 4 or 5 hours at a time and people getting turned away. I remember some serious frustration with folks when they sat in line for 2 hours and then were told they had to try again at like 3 o'clock or try again the next day. I mean, I think that's a far worse solution than anything that's presented here. Mary?
I was gonna call for a vote.
I think that's fair. Anyone, let's see, we've all had a chance to make comment. All those in favor of the motion to approve the letter, raise your hands. All opposed. Motion passes 4-2 with Commissioners Winfield and McCurdy in opposition. All right, we've reached the end of our general business action items. We have come to our consent agenda, and our consent agenda today does not actually consist of the approval of minutes. It does consist of the ratification of payment of bills, and those bills are in the amount of $585,224.32. Payroll in the amount of $415,958.66. So total bills and payroll in the amount of $1,001,082.98. Also on the consent agenda is a Google Workspace renewal, 2024 USU Extension Cooperative Agreement, local consent for 2025 Buckers and Barrels Unlimited Rodeo presented by Young Guns Rodeo, Pipeline Emergency Response Grant Award and associated purchase order, HASU Library Rent Agreement, and Wildland Fire Program Support Budget between Grant County and the Utah Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands for the calendar year 2025.
Move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Thanks, Mary. And second by Bill. All in favor of the motion to approve, raise your hands. And that passes unanimously. Oh, okay. All right, we've come to the end of our agenda as presented. So I will now close this Grand County Commission meeting at 5:36 on November 19th. And I will actually, let me, you know what, I'll do that after the, all right, I'm actually gonna suspend the Grand County Commission meeting until we actually have a public hearing today. So I will suspend the Grand County Commission meeting. We'll reconvene that meeting after our public hearing. So I will open our public hearing. Let's see, so this is the Community Development Block Grant first public hearing notice. Notice is hereby given that Grand County will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, November 19th, 2024 at the Commission Chambers, 125 East Center, Moab, Utah at 5:37 p.m. Grand County is eligible to apply to the Utah Department of Workforce Services for funding under the Community Development Block Grant, known as CDBG, Small Cities Program, a federally funded program administered by the state of Utah, Housing and Community Development Division, HCD. Grand County is eligible to apply for CDBG funding provided applicant meets the applicable program requirements. The purpose of the public hearing is to provide citizens with pertinent information about the Community Development Block Grant Program and to allow for discussion of possible applications. This public hearing will cover eligible activities, program requirements, and expected funding allocations in the region. The CDBG program can fund a broad range of activities, including but not limited to construction of public works and facilities, for example, water and sewer lines, fire stations, acquisition of real property, and provision of public services such as food banks or homeless shelters. In the event that Grand County chooses to apply for CDBG funding, a second public hearing will be held at a later time to discuss the project. Further information can be obtained by contacting Alicia Oliver or Quentin Hall, its Commission Administrator's Office at 435-259-1342. In compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, individuals needing special accommodations, including auxiliary communicative aids and services during this hearing should notify the Grand County Administrator's Office at 125 East Center, Moab, Utah, 84532, at least 3 days prior to the hearing. Individuals with speech and or hearing impairments may call the Relay Utah by dialing 711. Spanish Relay Utah 1-888-346-3162. And this is published on State of Utah's public meeting notice website at www.utah.gov/PMN on October 30th, 2024. All right, so I'll open the public hearing. Caitlin?
My name is Caitlin Myers. I'm the Executive Director of the Moab Area Community Land Trust. Would like to submit a comment to propose a project for your consideration to sponsor the Moab Area Community Land Trust, building water and sewer infrastructure for phase 2 of Arroyo Crossing. This project, before I talk about the project, I just want to say thank you first for your support, ongoing support for Arroyo Crossing. This project has been successful in large part because of the county support, including a 2023 CDBG project to build water and sewer for 27 townhomes. That CDBG funded project was through the Housing Authority that's now under construction. We have been diligently working on our first phase of construction since 2021, or 2020, starting housing construction in 2021. In the last 3 or so years, we've now have 46 occupied homes. In addition to the infrastructure for the 27 townhomes, we have an additional 70 units under construction. That's over 140 units over a period of 3 years, which is pretty incredible. Even within those 46 units, several of them are county employees, let alone employees and other services across our community. We have been moving quickly and we are ready to start our second phase. So this project, this proposal is to fund water and sewer infrastructure to serve 112 housing units, which will include 84 rental units and 32 units for homeownership opportunities. The estimated grant request at this point is $498,000, including engineering and construction for water, sewer, and irrigation water. And the total cost of this infrastructure project is about $1.7 million. This project is shovel ready. It is an eligible use for CDBG funds, and it is one of for using these funds for housing and for public infrastructure development is in compliance with the priorities by CERTA for how they're going to allocate CDBG funds. All of the units at Arroyo Crossing are permanently restricted for low and moderate income households who live and work within our community. And over 50% of the neighborhood and therefore this project will be below 80% AMI. The subsidy that is provided with the CDBG grant will be passed along to the occupants of these homes, as is all of the other grant funding and other funding that you've supported through our work. And it is really to provide permanently affordable housing for the people who live and work and thrive in our community. So, yeah, that's what I got. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Caitlin. Is there? Okay.
Yeah, just.
Okay, so. Okay. Okay, thanks, Caitlin. Is there anybody on Zoom who'd like to comment on this public hearing? It looks like not. So I will leave this public hearing open until 10 minutes after 6 today. And we will return to our regular Grand County Commission meeting. So do we need to?
Can we go into recess until
till
public
6
commenter or presenter comes?
I think we should go into recess.
Okay.
Until
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
We'll do public,
Citizens to be
yeah,
heard.
citizen spirit, and then close the public hearing at 6:10. Okay.
Yeah, just because we put this.
We put this on the public notice website before
Right.
6 p.m. and
Yeah.
you guys raced through the agenda. It's a very, very pleasant surprise, but yeah, I do think where it was noticed that the public hearing would start at 6, I think it's important for us to stay open.
Right.
Until 6 in case someone else comes
Okay.
and wants to present something to the commission. Okay, with that, then I will recess our meeting until 6 o'clock. We will return at 6 o'clock. We'll have a citizens to be heard section, and then we will revisit our public hearing. Thanks.
recess.
Are we good? Okay, it's 6 o'clock. We've come back from recess and we will now hold our regular citizens to be heard session for the Grand County Commission meeting. If you are a citizen and you're here to make comment, please raise your hand and I will invite you forward. Or if you are on Zoom, you can use the raise your hand feature or unmute and start talking. I'll go to the room first. Is there anyone here in the room who would like to make comment as a citizen? Okay, about the development grant. Is there anybody online who is here to make comment? Steven?
And just noting that we have it recorded, the meeting recorded, Ms. Myers did a presentation previously and it's available on YouTube. So you can go back and see that presentation. And we haven't had any other ones. Yeah,
right. I mean, we have 10 minutes to kill if you.
Somebody else might have just logged in or.
Watching
That wouldn't affect anything with like as far as doing everything by the book, would it? Okay. Yeah.
You can say it for the hallway. A quick recap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody can hear anymore.
We have to stay to that.
This one will be quicker and less formal. So I already put my computer right. My name is Caitlin Myers. I'm the executive director of the Moab Area Community Land Trust. I am submitting a comment on behalf of the Land Trust for the county to consider sponsoring a CDBG application for water and sewer infrastructure for Arroyo Crossing Phase 2. I can actually probably do the thing. Okay.
My memory.
Before talking about, well, I just wrote it, so it's all here. First, want to express my gratitude on behalf of the Land Trust for all of the support and the partnership that the county has provided to Arroyo Crossing. This project is successful because of in large part because of a lot of the support that the county has gave to this project, including 2023 CDBG application for the Housing Authority to build water and sewer infrastructure for 27 townhomes. That project just broke ground a couple of months ago, which is very exciting. In addition to those 27 units for which infrastructure is under development, since starting housing construction in 2021, we now have 46 occupied units at Arroyo Crossing, some of which are York County employees across various departments and various buildings for the county. And we have about 70 units additionally under construction, both homeownership and rentals. So we have been moving very quickly through phase 1. We are ready to start our phase 2. How am I doing? Am I tracking pretty well?
Very
So for this CDBG project, we are proposing water and sewer infrastructure. The anticipated cost is $489,000 for engineering and construction services. The total cost of this project is estimated at $1.7 million. This project is shovel ready. We've been working through entitlements. We have engineering designs. We have development partners lined up. And the conclusion is losing me a little bit. But yes, we would really appreciate the support. The subsidy that this grant provides will be passed along to the occupants of these units in perpetuity because of our lock-ground lease. All units at Arroyo Crossing are for low and moderate income households who live and work in Grand County, and over 50% of the neighborhood, and therefore at least 50% of this phase 2 area will be under 80% AMI. Really appreciate your consideration and your support. How's that?
That was awesome. Yeah, thank you, Kim. Right?
Easier the second time.
All right. Yeah, well, thanks.
So we've decided we're going till 6:10,
6:10.
so we've got time to kill.
Right.
Right.
So who knows, like, I assume this is federal grant money? Right?
I
That
think
gets
it
filters down?
It originates federally, right?
Right, okay.
But it's distributed through CERTA, right?
I think there's 933,000.
I went to the workshop the other day. There's actually $933,000 and some change available for the Southeast Utah group.
So four
So
counties.
there will be 4 counties that will be applying for it, and it's a competitive, slightly competitive process depending on, on what gets submitted. But
And what types of projects are eligible? I mean, we seem to always do housing.
housing, yeah, infrastructure, it's what part of the biggest one. They have a couple of other breakouts that they brought up this year that are new, but they really encourage more infrastructure and housing and, some of that kind of stuff.
And doesn't need to have like some kind of low income angle to it? Could it be like high end housing or what's?
No, I think it does have some parameters attached to it. It's supposed to be community development and overall community development. There's actually we've got a book in there about that big.
Okay.
We can't go
I was
through
trying to
it,
avoid
but-
reading the full book, so you're doing great so far
Yeah.
with the summary.
Last year, we applied for the fire truck,
Yeah.
but we did not get the grant.
And is that because it doesn't fit the federal rules or just the local deciders?
No,
Didn't
I
wanna
think
do
it
fire
was,
trucks.
we're not really sure why. I actually reached out to Corinne after that last workshop to see if we could get a list of the grants that we've applied for in the past and why we got the grant or why we did not get the grant especially, and she's gonna be providing us with a report on that. We'll actually be meeting with her on Friday.
Last year, didn't every county apply for a fire truck? Wasn't that right?
There were a few applications.
I do know
Or
that
there's
the board, and I sit on that board, does not vote on who gets the grants. It's a separate.
It's a point system through
Yeah.
your application. You actually submit your application and you get awarded points for each portion of the application. And then it's sent through based on that point system on what comes in, in
Okay, but the
higher.
people who award points and tally them all up at state level or federal level? Or is it
Yes,
four
it's
county
state level.
State level.
But it's not the same people that you submit the applications to. It's actually a state board that reviews after you've submitted your applications and they've gone through and scored it based on all of the points. It's a very, very specific point system.
Then what's the role of the board that you're sitting on? CERTA, these grants, do you play any role with them?
None whatsoever. I mean, the applicant, it goes into, I believe, what do they call it? It's a program. I don't even think it's a human that tallies all the points. They just enter the information and it spits out and you get a 96 or you get an 88, whatever, but it's not, it isn't handled at all by the board members. They don't have any say.
So does that mean also there's no effort? Like I know with, I'm blanking on the acronym, but the oil and gas lease money.
Nope. No, CIB?
Yeah, CIB, I think they try to keep it even with counties so that, roughly proportional to the amount of revenue they're generating.
Correct.
And it sounds like maybe if that's not happening here, like, if Emory got a bunch last year, then this year they're gonna do grant, it's just some rigid point system. So if San Juan County happened to submit things with lower points, then they would just rarely get a grant.
Yeah, we choose
went
which
through the debate
application we
last
want to
year about
support
sending-
and then.
So last year we had Thompson was looking at getting a grant for,
But they were too late or something.
that's right, yeah.
I think we also looked at which one we thought.
Yeah, that's right. I think because we only
I
could
think
do
we-
one, we
Yeah, we.
decided to do the fire truck.
Yeah. 'cause
So
there
at
was
the
a-
next meeting, we will actually present an action item for you to choose based off of anyone that presented something during the public hearing. Will present to you whatever projects came forward during that public hearing, and then you get to decide which one you want to support going forward.
If there's more than one.
If there's more than one
applicant, you say, Yes, I remember that.
Yeah.
There were a bunch last time, weren't there?
There were a couple
Picked the
different
fire
ones last
truck.
time, yeah. Fire truck and then
Thompson,
Thompson, and then I think Thompson had 2 projects that they wanted to put forward for
was-
this one.
It's like two water, right? It's like.
Yeah, right. It was yeah. And they were kind of smaller
Castle
amounts.
Valley had something too, maybe, or
I think
maybe
Castle
not.
Valley did have something.
Maybe that was CIB.
I think they might have been CIB.
It might have been CIB. I can't remember for sure. I
I think-
wasn't as involved with it. last year, so-
Thompson and the fire department were the only ones that we heard presentations
Yeah.
from.
The application would be prepared by.
So it's gonna be a combined effort of the applicant and probably our office, because it has to go through a county entity in order to even be able to apply. So, and there's various situations. Our biggest concern this year was going to be whether or not we had a survey. And just a good example of that is, for instance, if this is one that goes forward, then because it's already income based, we would not have to do an income survey. But if it was another project, like another fire truck, and it was gonna be countywide, then we would have to do a countywide survey, an income survey for the whole county, so that it could be justifiable whether or not we fit into the correct bracket for that grant period.
So it would- like
Cycle.
if the average income in our county was low, then we would have a better chance of getting.
Correct.
Well, it's 6:10.
Yeah, all right.
Filled
There
with
you go.
time. Thank you, Alicia. That was great.
That's really
Okay.
good information.
And thanks, Caitlin. Yeah.
We've
All
been-
right. It is 6:10. We've reached the end of our public hearing and our regular Grand County Commission meeting. So I will adjourn both of those meetings. Thank you.
Yeah.